president called me last night after he tweeted to let me know it happened. I had already seen it.
Congressman Dan Donovan receiving a big political boost in the form of a presidential tweet last night. There is no one better to represent the people of New York and Staten Island, a place I know very well, than Rep. Dan Donovan, who is strong on borders and crime, loves our military and our vets, voted for tax cuts, and is helping me to make America great again. Dan has my full endorsement.
I think it's a validation of the president's view on my value to him and his agenda going forward, making America great again.
But one issue, the Staten Island Republican didn't vote for the president's tax reform bill, as President Trump said he did in his tweet.
The president's very well aware. I've spoken to the president many times about my vote on the tax bill. He realizes that sometimes things that are good for the rest of the country aren't necessarily good for the people of New York.
Still, the Trump endorsement could prove hugely helpful in a Republican primary race where both candidates are fighting over who will fight harder for the Trump agenda.
My opponent is a little desperate. He doesn't have a record in Congress to run on. He hasn't passed even one substantive bill, and he's voted against President Trump down the line.
Michael Grimm used to have the seat in Congress that Donovan now occupies, representing Staten Island and parts of South Brooklyn. Now he wants it back. He resigned in 2015 after pleading guilty to tax fraud and served 7 months in federal prison. Donovan took his place.
I stepped up when we needed somebody to step up after he was convicted and he abandoned us.
Grimm now argues he was the victim of a political witch hunt, and he only pled guilty because he knew the cards were stacked against him.
It was rigged. I knew that there was no chance I was going to get an opportunity for a fair trial. This was political. It was a persecution or a witch hunt.
There's a person who wants to get a federal job paid by taxpayer money so he could get a federal pension paid by taxpayer money when he failed to pay his taxes. I think the community should be outraged.
And Donovan is doubling down, using Grimm's tax fraud to demand he release his tax returns.
I don't know of any House members that are required to release their tax returns. Whatever the rules are, I abide by those rules.
You have somebody who's been out of prison for 2 years, who doesn't have a job, who drives around in a Lexus, won't show us where his income is coming from, and won't release his taxes. I think that people have a right to be suspicious.
Taxes aside, President Trump also saying Grimm has an electability problem. Very importantly, Dan Donovan will win for the Republicans in November, the president posted, and his opponent will not.
Is that kind of the argument? It's what President Trump said. It kind of sounds like what you're saying is if Grimm wins this primary,
we lose the seat.
That's it?
Yep.
Still, Grimm accuses Donovan of abandoning his base and points to a recent poll done by the Democratic Party that shows he's in the lead in the district by 10 points.
Are you the essential Republican frontrunner right now?
No question.
Now, that poll that shows Grimm up 10 points in the race, as I mentioned, was conducted by the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Reminder, this is a Republican primary. Right. Donovan's campaign suggested the Democrats bias the poll because they would ultimately rather run against Grimm in the general election. Still, Michael Grimm told me he thinks his lead is larger than 10 points. A reminder that New York primary day is June 26th.
That's wild that they're the same party and it's the primary.
And they're not pulling any punches.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. After that, the general election is going to be a cakewalk. Right?
Yeah.